Okay, so we just got started. I guess this is a profile interview, so if you want to start off just by saying your name and spelling it, please.
Okay, hello, my name's Alma Rhodes. That's spelled Almarhodes.
Okay, and that's just for the record, so make sure I don't misspell your name ever. So when I write the story. So what do you think is one big defining moment in your life? You know, let's just start there. Like something
Sure.
that really defines you as a person.
So I was raised as one of the youngest of 6 kids, and raised by a mother who our father was alcoholic. He passed away, and so she was trying to raise 6 kids. And a huge defining moment in my life was when I remember her crying because my brother had eaten all the bacon that was in the house, and that was supposed to suffice us for a week. And I remember thinking at that time that was not going to happen to me. I was going to make sure I did whatever I needed to do so I wasn't facing the stress that my mother felt at that time. Defining moment, shaped a lot of my personality.
So, how did you make that happen for yourself then? Because now you're very successful, correct? Yeah.
By some means, but I could have done a lot more. But how did I make that happen? Well, that happened when I was probably 9 or 10 years old. By 12, I had a job. And that was between the summer of my 6th grade and 7th grade years. And I worked not only the 40 hours a week that they scheduled me for, but I asked for all the extra hours I could get. I ended up usually averaging about 65 hours a week. I took that money, I saved it. I used some of it for clothes because I got tired of wearing my sister's clothes, because by the time you get to be number 4, they're pretty worn out. But, for the most part, I put that into savings, and I had a strong desire to see that money and those dollar signs go up in that checking account.
I was always number 1, so they always had to take my clothes.
Right?
So I got to pass it on to get money.
You were the lucky one. I was the baby.
Well, yeah, each has its benefit, right?
Yeah, right. True that.
So, I guess after that, moving on, afterwards, can you tell me, I know that you kind of lost your mom at a young age. Tell me how those things kind of affected you and maybe even motivated you, those kinds of...
Sure, absolutely. So I did lose my mom when I was 16, and that was, and I was orphaned at that point because my father had already passed away, and so it was very much, it was very stressful, right? And so, I guess one good thing out of it was that my mother by that time had been able to put life insurance on herself, and so I did get a lump sum of cash, and I was determined that was going to get me through college, and it did. So very defining there. And so God bless my mother, right, for having that foresight to make sure that we kids all had that, and I was able to use that way. And how did I make it happen? Honestly, just taking advantage of my ability to work hard and use the gifts that I've been given, which, there's people who say I'm, fairly smart. Thankfully, my sons have gotten some of that too. And I used it, don't waste what has been given to you. So I used it. Mm-hmm. It's not like, I wish I could say there's some magic formula or anything else, but I just worked hard and a lot. And I'm lucky I don't need a lot of sleep, so I can do that.
So you want to talk about them at all? How did they kind of affect your life in...
I'm sorry, the what?
Your boys, in good
oh my
ways,
goodness.
Both ways?
Well, so first of all, I did not ever want to have children. And my husband wanted children desperately. And I finally caved and I said, oh, fine, I'll get pregnant and he can raise it. And I remember thinking exactly that. I remember thinking he can raise it, because I was in the middle of my career. Very successful at the time. I was maybe 3 years in after getting my master's program, and we had been married for 8 some years, and he had wanted kids from the day we got married. And I got pregnant. I remember crying when I got pregnant and thinking, oh my goodness, I feel so sorry for this child because he's going to have me as a mother, right? And I'm not kidding you. I remember sitting on the couch crying. And then when that child is born and they say they never cut the umbilical cord, that is so true. And I've never had anything that, was more prideful for me than to see my kids, do well. And I took... Well, actually, I told you I feel like I'm moderately successful. I probably could have been well into an income level above where I am now had I, persisted and said, no, I don't want kids, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. They are, and they're going to have kids, and someday, I'm going to make them as psychotic as they did when they were little. And so it'll be lovely. And they watching them grow it makes you stop and think and grow. So it really does. And watching their successes, nothing that hits you better. So.
So how do you think like kind of your own success kind of, and not just, financially, but just in other ways too, like that helped you kind of raise them?
Oh my goodness. I can tell you one thing that's for sure. So I was working with a client, and this client had kids, and I remember he would like want to go home at like 8 o'clock at night, right? Because he wanted to go home to his kids. And I kind of was not appreciative of that. And not appreciative of the fact that, he had young kids at home and he wanted to get home. And so I can tell you my kids made me a better person, because once I had them, I realized, of course, there's nothing more important on this earth than raising those kids and making sure you raise them right so that they can do well and can leave. You're not going to leave any legacy. You can leave land, you can leave assets, you can leave a trust for whatever, but your true legacy is if those kids do well and are good citizens. And honestly, if I could go back, and the client's name was Mark, if I could go back and apologize to that guy, I really would, because I was such a jerk about it so many times. But so my kids did a lot to make me a much, much better person.
More understanding, kind of compassionate.
Much more, not even compassionate. They just kind of shook me out of this mold of thinking, the only thing to achieve was corporate and financial success. There's a lot more important success than that. Don't get me wrong, I still like corporate and financial success, but it would be nothing if my kids were not the people, the men that they are. It would mean absolutely nothing. In fact, it'd be horrifying. So.
Because kind of like your family kind of makes it for you.
It's, at the end of the day, they're going to bury me. Accenture, my company that I work for, might send flowers if I'm lucky, but the kids, I'm hoping, will be there, So it's what it's about.
And so now you've actually very recently gone through a divorce. And so I know that you were married for, like 30 years almost. And so, like, for you, how has that, like, transition been? Because I know it's kind of...
Horrifying, right? Horrifying. No, so my husband is a good, kind, lovely, wonderful man. But over 30 years, we just lived in different worlds, right? And I had my corporate world. Does that sound right? I don't know. And then I would come home to our, farm world. And I felt like I came back into that world, but I didn't ever feel like that. Unfortunately, I was able to get my son's father, who is a very smart and wonderful man, to come into the corporate world. He just didn't have that desire. That's just not in him. And, I have to respect that. But unfortunately, I'm getting to the age where I need to think about what's the next decade. And the next decade, I'm hoping I can finally quit working. And what that means to me is I want to be able to travel, and I want to be able to go places. And I don't really want to be tied to, a farm and cows and those types of things. And I wish that we could have merged that together, but we didn't. So, I hope my son's father will find somebody who wants to raise cows with him, because he wants to do that. So
but like, did you feel that way for had that been going through your head for a while, like even when the boys were younger? Or?
Yeah. It was there for quite a while. But you have your kids and you have a common purpose, and you unify around that common purpose, which is to make sure those children are raised with all the support they need. And we are very, very good in a common purpose, raising the kids, business activities, making sure he has a farm and a profitable farm, and I help with that. I have rentals and profitable rentals, and he helps with that. We're very good on a common purpose, but we couldn't seem to get that common purpose between the two of us. So yeah, it's been there a while. Once the kids were both out of the house, though, it became stark. So, it's not a prideful moment that I have to say I divorced. but we
No,
are.
I mean, but people do it. They have to. You know, it's not like I don't think it's anything bad or good. It just is.
It is. It just is, right? Like I said, you know, we are very good together in so many ways. There's that bug again. And, you know, I will continue to help him in whatever he needs. And you know what? He'll continue to help me. So, good friends after many, many years.
Yeah, for sure. And then with them now, you've seen them kind of grow and like both go into like very different fields, but they both
Right,
like,
crazy.
They both love and enjoy. Like definitely, I think Daniel's. You know, I don't think he's ever really regretted going into physics, even though it's really hard sometimes. Or
Well, he might. He might after his GRE, but we'll see.
He gets the score back, and it's just like, oh,
Right.
well, I'm gonna go.
Forget about it. Yeah, forget about it.
But so for you, like, I know you're probably like super momming it, you know, when you were when they were younger, just because. Like, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, and you're right, because actually that's the pressure put on women. I think it's still there, but it was really, really, really there, I felt, at least, when I was raising kids. You know, I mean, I had this corporate job. I was trying to climb the corporate ladder. I was trying to, you know, and I'm type A, shocking that. So, you know, you have to do whatever you do to be best at everything you do. And I don't regret that. As I said, I'm lucky that I don't require 10 hours of sleep a day, and I can get by on 5, and I did that for a lot of years. And I think that helped me be able to get the kids raised the way I wanted, because you're left with these feelings of guilt that you give too much to the office, guilt that you don't give enough to the kids, guilt that if you give too much to the kids and you don't give enough to the office, and there's never that cross point where you feel like it's kind of good. Some of the technologies that we have now make that so much better, because I had to travel so much more when they were younger. I remember coming back from a particular trip after being gone 14 days and ended up buying the kids some ferrets out of guilt, right? Hated those things. Wished I'd never done it, but I did it, you know, because mommy guilt took over. And now with some of the technology, at least you can balance some of that. So I don't think about it as work-life balance, because there's not a balance, there's an integration. It has to be a whole life, and it has to be integrated. And I think that your generation, I hope, will be able to do that much more successfully than my generation, because of not only the technology that allows it to be easier, but also the changing attitudes towards who should be doing what. I've told you a story before, I know, about the woman who brings up that, hey, you know, it's Christmas time, don't you hate buying gifts? And she's in a room full of men, and the men say, oh my goodness, yes, every relative in the, you know, comes out of the woodwork and they need a gift. And then she says, and how many of them did you buy? And in my generation, that was the woman. In your generation, I don't think that's quite as prevalent. And if it is, you need to keep working on it.
Let's see what time we're at. Okay. I guess, kind of lastly, is there any kind of, I don't know, like lasting impression you had just from the life you've kind of led and what you've built so far? Like,
well, so the life that I've led and what I've built, I mean, so first of all, I've loved what I've done in terms of my work, and I've loved what I've done in terms of my side business on my rentals. And I would say that, you know, over time you mellow, right? And over time you realize that there are important things in life, and the important things in life are people. And whether this comes through every day or not,